to say it is always a seller's market. It is a gloomy day here in Florida. We've had some really bad weather these last couple of days, and today it is pouring. And I'm just down here with our dog because I don't think she's liking the weather either. And so, in order for me to do this video, we're just gonna give her a little bit of love so that she's not barking. But anyways, I wanted to talk to you all today. I woke up yesterday morning just with like world events heavy on my heart. I think that there's so much stress going on right now. It feels like sometimes the world is coming apart at the seams. If you're watching the news, you know, we had this pandemic, we have this coronavirus, we have lockdowns, now we have this terrible event that happened in Minnesota, and we've got protests going on everywhere. And I don't know about you guys, but it just seems like there's this just imbalance in the world right now, and it's really hard because a lot of it seems out of our control. And one of my favorite quotes was actually from John Wooden, who was I don't follow basketball, but he's a famous basketball coach from UCLA and a very successful guy. And I follow, Tony Robbins' approach, which says, model success leaves clues. And if you want to be successful, you follow successful people. And he was a very successful coach, and he's got so many golden nuggets of wisdom and quotes. And so his famous quote was, don't worry about the things that are out of your control, only worry about the things that are. But I feel like today, I don't know some of us don't know what's in our control and out of our control. Are we in control of these protests? Can we go out and make some change in this world? And it's really hard to decipher what's inside of our control and outside of our control right now. And so I wanted to share a story with you guys. I actually haven't shared this story with hardly anyone before because it was a really traumatic experience. And so for a long time I didn't talk about it. But it was, oh my gosh, how long ago was it? It was 8 years ago when we first started investing in real estate. And we found our first investment property, and we were under contract. And at the time I was living in Georgia, and this investment property was down in Florida. And so I was traveling back and forth from Georgia to Florida. I was in a coaching program down here in Florida trying to learn how to invest in real estate. And we found this investment property, so we went under contract with it. And I would come, I came down with my son, who at the time was 10 months old. Our youngest son was not born yet. And so him and I were here, and we were actually looking for a home to buy for ourselves. And so we were following the realtor around, and we were looking at homes for ourselves. And we also had this investment home under contract. And my mother-in-law was with us because I needed help with the baby. I didn't want to be bringing him in and out of the houses, and half the time he was napping because he was only 10 months old. And so we went into this house, me and the realtor, and all of a sudden it just started downpouring, I remember. And I was so glad I hadn't brought the baby in the house. And my mother-in-law got into the back of the car to play with him because it started raining, and we were kind of just, me and the realtor were waiting in the house, waiting to get back in the car, waiting for the rain to stop. Because it was one of those, if you're not here in Florida, you don't know that you might not know that we have these like crazy downpours all of a sudden, where it will be sunny and all of a sudden like the skies open up and it just starts downpouring. And that's exactly what this was. And then 5 minutes later it's gone. And so 5 minutes later, the rain stopped. It was just trickling down. And so I got back in the car, and my mother-in-law was still in the back seat with the baby. And we were only going like 5 minutes down the road. And so she said, no, I'll just stay in the back with the baby. And, we're only going 5 minutes. And so let's get going. So I started following the realtor to the next house, and we got on a pretty busy road, highway. And all of a sudden, this car from the other lane, from ongoing traffic, started crossing over the median. And I remember thinking to myself, like it happened all so fast, but I remember thinking to myself, this doesn't seem right. And all of a sudden, the guy started coming across the median, and his car started spinning out of control. Because the car started spinning out of control. And it started spinning so fast that it ended up slamming into our car, and it missed the realtor. The realtor was in front of us, And he must have sped up while he was spinning. I mean, he was going 50 miles an hour when it happened, and it happened so fast that I didn't have time to react and to hit my brakes. And when he hit us, he hit the front of us, and it slammed our car into this concrete wall. They were doing some kind of construction at the time. And the car literally went like this. It was like an accordion where the front got hit and then the back got hit. All of the airbags went off, and I blacked out for a second. And when I came to, and I think it was only for a second, but when I came to, I remember hearing the baby screaming because Cameron was in the back seat. And I remember looking back at me, and my mother-in-law was not responsive. I didn't know if she was breathing. She had, blood coming down. She was slumped over, and I tried getting out of my car, and the car was just totally smashed. I couldn't even open, the door. And I remember thinking to myself, I know the baby's okay because the baby is crying, but I needed to get to my mother-in-law because she was unconscious, and I didn't know if she was dead, if she was breathing, if, whatever. And so I finally pushed my way out of the car, and gosh, it's such a blur now, but I just remember screaming at the people who had stopped, because obviously this stopped traffic, and I just remember screaming for people to call 911, and I was just didn't even know what to do. And then I remember all of a sudden someone said, "It smells like gasoline, get the baby out of the car." And so I'm like running around to the other side of the car, and I'm grabbing the Cameron out of his car seat because it did smell like gasoline. And I couldn't get my mother-in-law out of the car because she was unconscious, and I didn't know if she had broken her neck, or you can't move someone out of a car like that. And so, we called 911, and the ambulance came, and I was trying to get a hold of my husband at the time, and he was up in Georgia working. He wasn't even there. And at first he wasn't picking up his phone. And when he finally got a hold of me, all he could hear was sirens in the background, and I was hysterically crying, and I didn't know if my mother-in-law was alive at this point because I was just trying to hold the baby, and everyone was around. It was so chaotic, you guys. I have never been in a major car accident like that before, and I hope it's the last. And it's funny because I dropped the kids off at their camp today, and on my way home it started raining. And for the first couple years after this car accident, when it would start raining, I would honestly get like panic feeling, like in this anxiety inside of me. And I've learned to control that. And now when it rains, I slow down like a grandma. I like instinctively just start going super slow, like grandma style. My husband always says, "Why do you drive so slow?" And I'm like, well, I got into a major car accident 8 years ago. That will probably like slow you down. But anyways, I was supposed to meet with an inspector at this house that we had under contract that day. And my mother-in-law went to the hospital in the ambulance, and then the realtor drove me and the baby to the children's hospital to get him checked out. And I remember sitting in the hospital, and I had to call the inspector, the electrician who I was supposed to be meeting at the investment property, and I texted him and said, "I'm so sorry, like last minute, I have to cancel this estimate from you, but I'll give you a call tomorrow." And long story short, my mother-in-law was in the ICU for a few days, and then she spent a few days in the hospital, and 8 years later, she is 100% fine. It took her almost a year to start walking completely normal again. It took me a few years to just be able to drive in the rain without me getting like panicky about it. But I remember it so clearly. The next day, my husband drove down from Georgia that night. And then the next day we went to go visit my mother-in-law in the ICU, and we had to stop at Target and get a new baby seat because after you get into a car accident with a baby seat, you got to get a new one. And I remember leaving the hospital. She was stable. She was probably getting transferred out of the ICU the next day. And I remember calling the electrician, and we rescheduled for the next day. And so I met him over at the house the next day. At this point, my mother-in-law was in the hospital. She was out of the ICU. And I remember meeting him, and I'm like, "I'm so sorry that I had to cancel so last minute, but I actually got into a car accident." And I think I started crying to him. And I was just, he was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, what happened?" So I was telling him what happened. And I remember him saying to me, "Oh my gosh, I don't know if I could like carry on after all of that. Like, I don't know if I would be here getting an estimate from someone after all of that." And I just said to him, for me, when things like this happen, you can't control what happened. I couldn't control that the driver hit me. I couldn't control that fact that my mother-in-law got, injured. But what I could control was my reaction to it. And for me, it was like, I need to move on. I need to get this house closed. We need to find, our home. And I, at that point, I knew my mother-in-law was going to be okay. She was transferred out of the ICU. But I remember telling him, you can't worry about the things that aren't in your control, but you can focus on how you're going to react to things that are out of your control. And I feel like that's what's happening today. So many things out of our control with this virus and the terrible thing that happened in Minnesota and these protests. But we have a choice and we have a decision to react to them. And so I just wanted to share that message because it was just on my mind today, and I was thinking about my own experience with the car accident. We ended up closing on that house just a few. I think we had to delay the closing just a few days because of everything that had happened. But we did end up closing on that house, and it was our very first investment property. And I have so many stories to share with you on that one, which we'll go into in these next few videos. But I hope you guys, take to heart that what's going on in the world is really chaotic and crazy. There is just this imbalance in the world right now, but I truly believe that good things are going to come out of what is happening. And I just know in my heart that if we can focus on how we react to it, that everything's going to be okay. So I am really excited to announce that next week we're going to be having a guest speaker on our Carrie Buys Houses page. We're probably going to do it a Zoom, and it's an agent here in Florida, and we're going to be talking about what's going on in the market, the statistics, what our predictions are for the future, because I think there's going to be a lot of changes coming up here in the real estate market, and I think a lot of homeowners and investors are concerned about what the future holds for us. So I'm really excited to have him on, and I will make that announcement as soon as we nail down a date and a time. That's it for now, guys. I love you all, and I'll see you on the next video. Thanks.